Hey everybody, welcome to this week's episode of A Month of Mondays. It's me, Gabe, your host. I am here with the lovely Hannah Yanis, who is going to sit quietly until we get to her, right? Yes. So, on this week's episode, we are going to be talking with Ref Aubrey Edwards. She has been all over the place. She's on Defy. She was at the Mae Young Classic. She was on Evolution. She's an amazing referee. I hope you guys really enjoy that interview. But first, of course, My Week in Wrestling, guys. This week, My Week in Wrestling obviously started off with one of the worst episodes of Raw that I have seen since the 90s. You know, there's no Doink the Clown. We have that. So, could be worse, could be better. Hopefully it gets better. We'll get to getting better here at the end of the show, too. But SmackDown on Tuesday was hands down the soothing balm, the saving grace, the healing ointment that I needed from the wicked STD that I got from Raw. It was so much better. It was so much fun. And man, it felt like Becky Lynch was gone forever. She was gone for one pay-per-view and one episode of SmackDown, if I remember correctly. So there you go. SmackDown and Raw, they were a thing. SmackDown, my God, is beating Raw to death right now. But that is not the important part of My Week in Wrestling. The important part of My Week in Wrestling was my trip to New Era Wrestling in Denver, Colorado at Mile High Comics and their Seasons Beatings. It was fantastic. I had so much fun at the show. I mean, you cannot beat going to a wrestling show. Their tickets are $10. If you are in Colorado and you're a wrestling fan and you're not going to New Era, you should be kicking your own ass because you're crazy. It was so much fun for so little money. It's at Mile High Comics at the Jason Street Mega Store. So you also get the great visual of you're in this giant comic book shop. And if you don't like comic books, then you definitely should still check out my other podcast, Thinking Outside the Long Box. Doyle got me this, the first of my holiday sweaters this month. But Jason Street Mega Store, Seasons Beatings, New Era Promotions, or New Era Wrestling. I got to see some really, really fun matches. My big takeaways, the Ragnarockers. I keep wanting to call them the Ragnarok and Rollers, but I know that's not right. Bruce Rogers and Hunter Gray. They're kind of like one of those like Franken teams where Bruce is like this rock and roller. He reminds me a little bit of like visually of like kind of early Johnny Nitro, Johnny Impact, Johnny gimmick name, but with less furry pants. Little bit like Dolph Ziggler, super fun to watch. Hunter Gray, he is a barbarian. He comes out dressed as like a Conan-style character, giant war axe, face paint, the works. So much fun to watch them work in the ring together, which in an effective squash match. Like, it was pretty crazy. It was a lot of fun to watch. They were a huge takeaway from me. Justin Big Guns Andrews, I want to say that's the right last name. And War Dog had a knockdown drag out for both of the titles, the 5280 title and the heavyweight title at New Era. War Dog was the takeaway, and man, that was a knockdown drag out fight. Like, it was a good looking match, like unbelievably fun. Logan Andrew, I want to say is the correct name for the Flying Hawaiian. I will definitely put in the show notes his correct name if that's not right. But man, talented kid. And found out today that he is real young. Like, unexpectedly young. He's the kind of guy that, you look at Pete Dunne today. He started Wrestling in Progress when he was like 15, 16 years old. I mean, we are talking that age bracket. This guy has a lot going on for him. He definitely can go some amazing places. And finally, I got to give a shout out to Dorian. I first saw him wrestle at Primos under the name Filter. He's from Stinktown, Greeley, Colorado, which is where I'm from. I don't know that he's from there, but he lives here. It's a college town. You'll hear a little bit about that next week. So sometimes I'm a little iffy on if people are actually from Greeley or I just met them in Greeley. But this dude is a powerhouse. Big, thick wrestler. He wrestled a small guy, so you got to see those great spots where BZB, the small guy, should give him a shout out too, because he did a great job of selling and a great job of getting literally tossed from one side of the ring to the other. It was so much fun. I had a blast, and you definitely, if you're in the Colorado area, you need to be going to New Era. You need to be going to Primos, because those guys put on a great show too. Next week on the show, our guest, who I will reveal at the end of the show, will talk to us a little bit about the state of Colorado wrestling. With that, hey, Hannah, how are you doing?
Good.
So, tell me, who are your favorite wrestlers right now?
Bailey and Braun Strowman.
What do you like about Bailey the most?
I like that she has the wiggle dudes, and I like that she has lots of cool stuff.
Yeah, lots of cool moves. Is that what you mean?
Yeah.
Did you just boop my snoot?
Yes.
Hey, tell me too, what do you like so much about Braun Strowman?
I don't really know.
You don't know? Do you like Braun Strowman because Daddy likes Braun Strowman?
Yeah.
Okay. So, if you could meet a wrestler, if you could meet Bailey, what would you say to Bailey?
I don't know.
You don't know? Would you give her a hug? Because she's a hugger.
Yes.
That's awesome. Well, Hannah, I love having you on the show. And maybe when you get excited about something about wrestling, you can tell me.
Okay.
Are you excited about anything else in wrestling?
That we get to go to shows.
Oh, that we get to go to shows? Are you excited to go to the New Era show next month?
Yeah.
We're going to take your friend Storm, aren't we?
Storm?
Yeah.
Oh, and Candy.
Oh, and Candy?
Yeah, Mom gave one to Candy, and Candy might go.
Oh, that'd be really awesome. Hey, what is your favorite sport that you're in?
Roller derby.
And tell them what your roller derby team name is.
Slaughterhouse Butcher Babes.
That's right. So, guys, thank you for watching this part. Can you say, thanks for watching me right now?
Thanks for watching me now.
We're going to kick it to the interview with Ref Aubrey Edwards. We'll be back after that. This is A Month of Mondays. Hey everybody on the line, I am really excited to talk to her. This is Ref Aubrey Edwards. You have probably seen her on Mae Young Classic or on the Evolution pay-per-view. She's also worked for Defy, 321 Battle, All-Star Wrestling, ECCW in Canada, and she's done NXT live shows. It sounds like she's all over the place. She probably does a lot more with her life than I do. But the reason we're talking to her today, of course, is because of this reffing thing.
This reffing thing.
This reffing thing. It's this cool space in the wrestling world to me, that there's this whole culture of people that have to support wrestling promotions, whether it be bookers and, behind the scenes and writers and trainers and all that other stuff. But in a lot of ways, one of the most important people at a wrestling event is the referee. So let's just get started with that. Aubrey, how are you tonight, and what's it like to be a referee?
Oh man. Tonight I'm doing okay. So this weekend I had 3 shows. I was in Seattle on Friday, did 3 matches there, and then I drove 4.5 hours at 4 a.m. to Oregon, did 6 matches there, and then drove 4.5 hours back the same night and had 4 matches Sunday. So my voice is gone. I've had about 10 hours of sleep, and I took an accidental head bump in one of my matches, so my nose is kind of all bruised up right now.
Oh my gosh.
So it's like, how am I doing and what's it like to be a ref kind of all answered in the same question.
That's awesome. Man, it's incredible. It's incredible to me a lot of respect is not given to the referee as an in-ring professional, but you guys take bumps, you guys get hit, you guys probably receive more inadvertent hits than on purpose hits, I would guess, just being so close to the action. Like, is that a fair assessment of kind of how things can go down sometimes?
I mean, it's wrestling. Accidents always happen. Like, you definitely hope that, like, everyone's going to be safe, whether you're a ref or a wrestler, whatever your role is in the ring. Like, honestly, no one ever wants to get hurt. That's the reason why we train. I train as a ref. I go to practice. I do rolls. I take bumps. I make sure that I have an understanding of where I am in the ring and how to move properly without getting hurt. But, like, you know, sometimes they end up just getting too close to the shoulders on a 3 count and someone kicks out and I get punched in the face.
Nice.
And it's part of the job, right? Like, you're putting your body on the line. And you're going into that understanding that. So it's like, am I complaining? Like, yeah, my nose kind of hurts, but like, would I have changed anything about this weekend? Absolutely not. It was awesome.
So you work a ton in the indies, but you've also done work with the WWE, which obviously is like the 10,000-pound gorilla in the corner.
Yeah, it's just kind of hanging out over the corner over there.
Right. Dominating all of our headlines and capturing all of our imaginations in a lot of ways. You know, when you have to transition between the two, is it difficult, or is the job like effectively the same on either side?
It was very similar, but also very different in a lot of ways. Like, for instance, back in September, I went down to Orlando and WWE kindly gave me the opportunity to work 3 shows for NXT live events in Florida. I think it was Dade City, Venice, and Tampa. And it was great. I got to work with a lot of cool people, but it was like seeing a smaller indie show that just happened to have a really big budget. Like, it was the same thing. Everybody shows up regardless of where you are on the card. If you're a champion or if you're a recent signee, everyone's unloading the truck. We all set up, we run through the show, we prep, we put on the show, we load up the truck, and we go home at the end of the night. And it's the exact same thing that I do every single weekend. But the quality of the talent and just the amount of experience in the room is so vastly beyond anything else that I've ever experienced. I'd say that's really the big thing. Like, it feels it's like when you're working a job in a career you've had a long time, and working for one company is like, okay, cool, all of these things are going to be the same. And then you end up going to another company, it's different people, same work, but then there's so many things that are slightly different. Like, you're prepared for it because otherwise you wouldn't be there. But there's still definitely, like, everyone does everything differently, but they're just, it's both intimidating and extremely humbling and so satisfying at the same time to work with those guys.
That's really cool. Like, it has to be just so gratifying for them to say, we want you to work this show, because it's that step up that so many, you know, wrestling professionals are looking for. They all want to go to the big show, whether that be, you know, New Japan or WWE or something like that. You know, it's, you know, around the world, the big show is slightly different in different places. But I mean, for us in the United States, it's for sure like you would want to work for the WWE. That's got to just be super validating of effectively your craft. Like, you've worked hard to do this thing and somebody recognizes it.
And that's really what it is, right? I'm just doing my thing and then they contact me. And I'm like this little nobody ref in, you know, the upper left corner of the United States. And I'm like, who the heck am I? Going through this whole imposter syndrome of like, are you sure you want me to come out? Like, what? I'm not sure, guys. Did you confuse me with someone else? There's not a lot of female refs. It's probably pretty easy too.
That's one thing that I'm super interested in.
Yeah.
As there, like you said, there are not a ton of female refs out there.
Nope.
As a female ref, do you feel like sometimes you get pigeonholed into just reffing women's matches, or are you kind of, when you're reffing indie, are you kind of all over the place? Like, I guess, what's the feel for that as a female referee?
It's a really good question, actually. And one of the things that I was really concerned with when, as a fan, watching WWE, like when they first signed Jess, I was really worried that they were going to keep her in only women's matches. And I'm like, you grow from every single competitor you work with, whether or not you're working with them from a reffing capacity or as a wrestler. But, you know, I was just like, man, you know, I really, really hope that she works with everybody in NXT, because that would be phenomenal. And luckily, like, that's exactly what they did. And I think it's great because it kind of helps them with their whole elevating women push that they've been doing with Mae Young Classic and Evolution and all of that. Like, if you have your female reffing both men and women's matches, then you're establishing her as an authority figure. It doesn't matter that she's like in charge of women or she's in charge of men. It's like she's in charge of everybody, so don't mess with her. So from a reffing standpoint, it's great. And I love that they did that. And then when I started reffing, I never really got pigeonholed at all. And I mean, part of it is we have a very small number of female talent in the Pacific Northwest. Like, we've got Nicole Matthews. She was on the Mae Young Classic with me. We've got Kat Power, we've got Bambi Hall, we've got a couple others that are, they're pretty much the bigger female names in the area, but there's not a lot. So if I was only doing women's matches, I'd probably be at like 15 by now, just
right.
because it's the amount is so limited, right? On top of that, as a business, if you're going to bring in referees, why would you bring in a referee and only use them for one match? From a cost benefit analysis, it just makes more sense to like, okay, if I have two refs, like, I'm going to have them both work half the show. That makes sense. So I think it's like no one really questioned it, which makes me really happy as a woman in a very male-dominated field, that it was just never something that was a concern. That's
cool. That's I mean, it's awesome to hear. Like, I mean, the first time I saw on NXT a female ref for a men's match, I was actually excited. I was like, oh, that's really cool that they're using her for other stuff now. Like, you know, that excites me. And like the women's evolution thing is like, it's kind of WWE talking out of both sides of its mouth, because it wants to like honor these people that it exploited in like this really horrible way that was entertaining to me when I was like a 12-year-old boy. But now that I'm like an adult with 3 daughters, I'm like, oh, that is awful. Stop doing things like that. And
we all grow, we all learn, and society changes, right?
Right.
But it's like, if you think about it, and I was kind of thinking about this a lot recently with all of just, you know, the promotion of women in the business, like, they retired the term diva, what was it, WrestleMania 32. Right. That was literally like 3 years ago. So this is all very new. And the fact that you have a company as big as them moving that quickly to just bring everyone back and equalize it. And it's like, regardless of what has happened in the past, like, you know, we all grow, we all learn from it. But to have everything moving as quickly as it is for a company that large, I think that is a huge thing for them. And I'm really, really appreciative that WWE is making this like an important tentpole for them as a company.
You know, as hearing that from like a wrestling professional that's not necessarily like entrenched in like the WWE universe heavily, that's awesome to hear, because it's hard to trust wrestlers when they're saying it on your TV screen, because you know someone wrote that line for them. But hearing you working with them saying, I appreciate it, that's really cool to me. Like, it gives a lot more validity to like the work that they're trying to get done. So talking about that quick movement, obviously Evolution was a humongous deal that you got to participate in.
Absolutely.
And honestly was one of the best pay-per-views that they put on this year. Like, there were 0 bad matches. How, like, what was the atmosphere like in that building participating on that show?
So for me, I mean, the biggest show that I had done at that point for WWE was Mae Young Classic, which, I mean, Full Sail is, you know, I think somewhere between like 500 and 700 people. Like, it's not very big, all things considered. Like, you've got way more people watching on the network than you do live. So from an intimidation standpoint, it's not really so much, because I've done crowds ranging from 15 to 1,500. Like, it's, you kind of get whatever on the indies. But doing something like Evolution, like even just standing in Gorilla, like the sound of 11,000 people through a curtain is like deafening. And it was kind of in that moment where it's like I'm getting goosebumps right now. It's kind of just crazy. But like, I got to do the Battle Royal, which was phenomenal, right? Like, Naomi gets thrown over the top rope and I get to ask her if she's okay. Like, what is this life? But like when you're standing there next to the ring and you look up and you can't see where the seats end because of the way everything is lit, it's just like, whoa, this is crazy. And I really love that all of the talent on the show brought 100% and really made that what it is, because I think this needs to be an annual pay-per-view. And I really hope that that is something that they choose to do. And I think everybody kind of hoped that. And I think everybody knows that that's, the thing that's on the line. So when you're under the gun, you just got to go. You got to do your best.
It's awesome because of Evolution and the way the pay-per-views have been structured over the last 2 to 3 months at WWE. Mm-hmm. The Evolution storylines were really the only storylines that carried over into Survivor Series. So this crazy story between Becky Lynch and Ronda Rousey and all the schmaz and the nose break and all this other crap that happened was pretty much the only thing I was interested in going into the Survivor Series pay-per-view. And I have literally never been at a point where the only match I care about is the main women's match. And that is an incredible thing that WWE has done. They have truly flipped the code on who I'm looking forward to, which is awesome.
Well, and I think the best part is that you're not the only one. Watching Twitter and everything over the last week after Monday Night Raw, it's Raw had 2 former UFC champions and everyone's talking about Becky Lynch.
Yeah.
That's not even a testament to women's wrestling. That's a testament to Becky Lynch. She's killing it. She's doing great things. Yeah.
Yeah, but Charlotte performed the crap out of that too. Going out and having to fill in last minute, that match was amazing, and it was hands down the best match on the show. And that's awesome. It's awesome that women's wrestling is at this point where it's my favorite thing most of the time.
Yeah, it's really interesting. I was describing it to a couple people who aren't wrestling fans, just kind of what has happened over the last few years, the whole concept of the bathroom break matches and the whole give divas a chance where they had the 2.5-minute match, or not even that, 30-second match on Raw or whatever. So just kind of catching people up on everything. And back when I was, still just a fan, I actually flew out for the first NXT Brooklyn. And my favorite match, the match that I was there to see, was Sasha versus Bayley.
Right.
And at the time, it's the main event for that show was Finn Balor and Kevin Owens. But right beforehand, they said, okay, this is a co-main event. And this was, before they started doing, okay, we're going to have women's matches, do all of the formats, Iron Man, Hell in a Cell. We're going to do all of that. We're going to have the women main event and pay-per-view. That was the kickoff to all of that. And just to kind of see, and literally that match, everyone around me was crying. It was incredible. Not a single dry tear. Everyone was just, this is the greatest story I've ever seen.
It's funny because I have a young daughter. She's 7 years old. And she was watching the show with us last night. And a lot of the time, I come home and I watch a ton of wrestling because I do this show, and I go to turn on the TV and she says, "Dad, I don't want to watch wrestling today," And so we put on something else until she goes to bed, and then I force my wife to watch 5 hours of wrestling, But today we come home and she goes, "Dad, I want to watch wrestling." I was like, "Okay, awesome. Who do you want to watch?" And she says Bayley. And because she loves Bayley, she saw her at a live event, Bayley's for kids in a lot of ways. And that's awesome to me. So I put on that match, the TakeOver Brooklyn between Sasha and Bayley. And she's glued to it. She was glued to it the entire time. And it's awesome that can capture the imagination of a little girl in the same way that Hulk picking up Andre captured the imagination of me as a little boy. And that's super, super cool to me, that the new Titans aren't necessarily, Brock Lesnar or AJ Styles or Daniel Bryan. They can be Sasha and Bayley and Becky and Ronda, and that's awesome to me. So,
well, yeah, it's representation, right? People like watching people who look like themselves on TV. And you have more women becoming wrestling fans, whether it's because their brothers got them into it or their dads or their spouses or just them in general. But people like seeing people in TV that they can relate to. So it's kind of one of those, like, I think, you know, people realizing there's this whole, like 50% of the population is a pretty huge market. So being able to put people on TV that look like that market, it just makes everyone happy.
How much do you think, like, personally, the success of Glow on Netflix has been for this? Because I feel like as soon as that was a super successful TV show, WWE really, really started pushing women's wrestling.
I feel like they were pushing women's wrestling before Glow, just given the timeline of everything. Like, they really, because, like, it kind of all started with the 4 horsewomen down in NXT, right? Like, that was kind of like where the spark that lit everything. And Glow, like, they just only finished the 2nd season. But I think what it did is not only did it kind of put women's wrestling in this good picture, but I think it more so brought a lot of people who maybe wrote off wrestling as a form of entertainment and made them question, wait, no, this might actually be interesting. Because I had a number of coworkers at my day job where they watched the 1st season of Glow, and I don't want to spoil it, but like the last episode is basically the example of the last episode of season 1. I basically tell people, like, this is why I watch wrestling. Like, if you are glued to your TV the entire time you are watching this episode, you know exactly what I get out of watching wrestling.
Right. And
people get it because they're like, oh my God, there's all of these like peaks and valleys in story, and all of these character arcs are just coming to, you know, crescendos, and it's all of these crazy things. And it's like, yeah, it's because you're invested. So I literally had 2 coworkers who had never been to a live wrestling show. They'd watch Glow and they heard me talk about wrestling all the time. And they're like, we want to come to a show. And that was the thing that got them to do it, because they're like, it's not just about, you know, big burly dudes beating each other up. There's this whole other element to it. I was at a show last night, and during intermission, I went to go get a glass of water, and I was talking to some woman who said, are you enjoying the show? And she's like, I've never been to a wrestling show before. This is so great. And she is just like, she is saying horrible things to the heels, where I'm like, you have a 10-year-old daughter here, ma'am. like, we maybe like tone it down. She's like, this is so much fun. Like, I've never felt so free. And really, it's because people don't have an opportunity to yell. Like, you can't go to a ballet and yell at, like, the Black Swan.
Right. You can't verbally assault someone. Yeah.
No, they get kind of mad when you speak up. Like, people want you to be quiet in movies. So wrestling is really that one art form where you have that, like, symbiotic and instant relationship between the fans and the performers that I think once people see it and they kind of make that connection, whether or not they understand that, like, they may just not like click that it's them making the connection, but I think they feel it. That it's like, oh, that's why this is cool. Okay.
That's awesome. I love the idea of, this is my first wrestling show. I'm going to say the worst thing I can possibly think of to that guy right there.
To be fair, he kind of deserved it. He was being a jerk.
I mean, that's his job. And it's the fans' job to hate him. So
Right.
So it's an amazing time for independent wrestling as well, not just the WWE, but, you know, with All In and the way that went off, like, spectacularly, and just the internet giving so much accessibility to, if you hear about a match, you can find it. Like, you don't have to tape trade with somebody, you know, on a different continent or something to get a match that you've heard about. Do you think that having all those extra eyes and just kind of the accessibility of independent wrestling is bolstering not just independent wrestling, but independent women's wrestling?
I would actually say, yeah. I know, like, just speaking from me personally, I know with how, like, the wrestling industry is so driven by social media. Like, you can follow any performer that you have interest in, whether they're in the indies or in WWE. You can follow writers, you can follow personalities, you can follow referees. I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook as Ref Aubrey. It's my little, I'm going to slide that in.
Excellent plug, by the way.
Yeah, you know how I did that? Just slide that right in. It's because you have the ability to connect with people instantly. I know from as someone who is working in the industry, I know I can make connections with fans in ways that like were not possible before the whole social media thing, right? Like as refs, we're pretty much a like silent character. We play a background role. So to have people who want to follow me and are interested in seeing what I'm doing is kind of this like weird concept to me, right? Like if I'm doing my job right, you don't notice I'm there until like I'm counting to 3. So for people to message me and say, hey, I saw you on Mae Young Classic. That was awesome. I'm like, you were watching me? You weren't watching the match? Like,
That's awesome. So I have a question that I've always wanted to ask a ref.
Yeah.
Okay. Both wrestlers go out of the ring.
Mm-hmm.
The 10 count should start. Why is it that sometimes you start the 10 count right away and sometimes you don't?
How do I answer that without... Our job is not necessarily just to enforce the rules. We're also acting as we communicate to the audience what is happening. Imagine that, and anytime I show up to a show, I remind myself that this may be someone's first wrestling show ever. That the first match on the card may be the first match that someone is watching. So you as a wrestling fan know that like when someone's in a corner, they have till 5 to get out. Whereas like someone who's new doesn't necessarily understand why a ref is suddenly counting, which is why you hear a lot of refs be very vocal and say, hey, come on, get out of the corner. You need to get out of the corner. Don't let me count you out. And then they start counting, right? And we're doing that not only just to allow the performers to understand like, hey, these are the rules I'm enforcing, just to be absolutely clear, but also to kind of help the audience understand what's happening. So I think a lot of it is, you know, what's the format of the match? How many competitors are in the ring? Where are we at the match? Where is it on the card? There's a lot of contributing factors at play.
That's awesome. Like one of my really good friends has reffed quite a bit in like independent stuff in Florida, and I just love the aspect of storytelling that's so important to a match that can only happen if there's a referee. Like you said, like, you know, get out of the corner. You're effectively explaining the rules, but you're not explaining the rules to the wrestlers. The wrestlers know what the rules are. You're explaining the rules to the person that's never seen it before. And that's
exactly
really, really cool. Like I've always just kind of wondered, like, what's the mindset there? Like, what do you do? Especially when my guy is about to get back in and the other guy's not, you know?
Right.
But that's just me being selfish. Well, thank you so much for taking the time to be on our show. Are there any events that are happening, you know, in the next like month or so that people could see you at, or other television appearances that you might be having?
I've got quite a few shows coming up to like round out the year and kick off early next year. I know this weekend, it's the Saturday after Thanksgiving, I'm down in Portland for Defy. It's going to be their third show in Portland, even though they're based out of Seattle. They've been making a couple trips south a little bit. I'm at 321 Battle in Seattle every other week. If you're not local to Seattle, you can actually catch it live on Twitch, twitch.tv/321battle. At 9 p.m. every other week. I'm doing Hunger Slam, which is with the West Coast Wrestling Connection. It's a 25-hour charity event in Salem, Oregon. And then starting next year, we've got things like ECCW is doing a 2-day Commodore Ballroom event with, like, I think Brian Cage, Bandito, Nicole Savoy, El Phantasmo. Like, they've got a bunch of people coming in. And then we've got a new promotion out here, Without a Cause, that's doing their third show January 13th. That just got announced yesterday. So I'm pretty busy.
That's awesome. And can you drop your social medias again for us one more time? Because I would love for people to go and follow you.
Yeah, so I'm on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook. You can follow me at Ref Aubrey, Aubrey. But yeah, I'm the same on all three. I tend to be most active on Instagram and Twitter. But if you're local to the Pacific Northwest or any shows I'm working, I share all of the events across everything. So if you want to see cool wrestling that's happening in the area or just want to see kind of where I'm at, follow any of those. And, you know, talk to me, ask me questions, message me. Like, I love people that are super interested in wrestling, in women's wrestling, in the role of referee. Like, I love all of it.
That's awesome. Well, Aubrey, again, thank you so much for your time. I really, really appreciate it. It's been a pleasure to talk with you, because now I've gotten to talk to a referee, which I don't get to do very often. So
yeah, we tend to only say, like, get out of the corner, and we count to 2 very often, but we do say things from time to time.
You count to 4 a lot too. So
2, 4, and 9.
There you go. That's awesome. Thank you again, and you have a great day.
Thank you. You too, man.
There you have it, guys. My interview with Ref Aubrey Edwards. It was really awesome talking to you. Hannah, who, as you can see, is not with me right now. She had to go to bed. Actually sat and listened to the bulk of that interview, which is about the most attention span I've ever had that little girl have. So I hope you enjoyed having her on the show. She's a lot of fun. I love her to death. Most of the time, you can't get her to stop talking, but that's okay. So, if you enjoyed the show, there's tons of ways that you can check us out. You can go to baronspace.com/momwrestlingpod. That's where you find basically all of the cool stuff that I'm putting out there. This week, my new wrestler came from my new wrestler Saturday, which ended up coming out on Sunday. Came from the New Era show that I went to. Every Friday night, I do a full match that I find on YouTube. Kenny Omega and I forget the other one today, but that's okay. Kenny Omega is in that match from this last week. So be sure to go check out the website, baronspace.com/momwrestlingpod. You can find us on Facebook by going to Facebook and searching A Month of Mondays. And you can find us on Twitter at Mondays Podcast. That's the easiest way to get a hold of us. The easiest, me. I always say us, like there's a billion of us. I mean, I got the muscle men, but they don't help. Anyway, you can find us on Twitter at Mondays Podcast. Check that out. I post a lot there. It's Twitter. It's easy to post there. So find us, Facebook, Twitter, website, or if you're a professional wrestler or a booker or a promoter or just anybody that wants to talk about wrestling in general, you can shoot me an email, momwrestlingpod@gmail.com. I would love to hear from you guys. If you have any big opinions, whatever you want to send my way, go for it. I'd love to hear it. Next week on the show, Zach Bank. He is one of the voices of IWC Legacy. It is some awesome wrestling stuff that he is doing, and we are going to be talking about the state of Colorado wrestling, as in how good or great is Colorado wrestling, and we are in the state of Colorado. Get it? It's a pun. I don't know if that's a pun. Maybe just a play on words. Anyways, for Hannah Giannis, I'm Gabe Giannis. Be sure to check us out on YouTube. If you're watching my face right now, click subscribe and the little bell. Also, check out my Get Better videos as I track kind of my progress on not being gordo. So, anyways, this is Gabe. This has been issue 8 of A Month of Mondays. See you next Monday. Musclemen, hit me with that sweet, sweet outro music. I mean, I don't expect much. Just push the button. Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, thank you once again for listening to A Month of Mondays, the Wrestling Magazine podcast. I've been your host, Gabe Giannis, and I just have a couple things to say. Be sure to check us out at baronspace.com/momwrestlingpod or find us on Twitter at Mondays Podcast. You can always find more great Baron Space podcasts at baronspace.com. Did I mention this has been a Baron Space production?